Welcome, listener. We're doing a critical deep dive today into, well, this rapidly escalating situation between Israel and Iran.
It's really moving fast.
Exactly. Our goal here is to try and cut through some of the noise, give you the key details, and really help grasp the actions and reactions that have pushed things to this really pivotal point.
Absolutely. What we're really unpacking here is essentially a direct conflict. It properly ignited mid-June, specifically after Israel's Operation Rising Lion.
Right, Operation Rising Lion.
Yeah. And that targeted critical nuclear facilities, Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan. It resulted, reportedly, in the deaths of dozens of IRGC commanders and scientists. That's Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps.
A defining event, really.
Oh, completely. It set off this incredibly dangerous chain reaction we're seeing now.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this timeline for you, just to see how quickly it all unfolded. So, June 13th, that's when Israel launched those first strikes. And Iran immediately called it a declaration of war,
Right.
vowing retaliation.
And they followed through remarkably quickly. I mean, mid-week, just days later, they launched hundreds of missiles towards Israel.
Hundreds.
Yeah. Now, intercept systems, like Iron Dome, were activated. But tragically, Soroka Hospital down south was hit.
That's right. I remember seeing reports, over 50 people injured.
Over 50 injured, yeah. And there was mention of a chemical leak, too, probably from, damaged medical supplies or something in the infrastructure itself.
And things just kept escalating. Just days after that, June 21st, Israeli airstrikes killed a top Quad's fourth commander, Saeed Izadi.
A very significant figure. And that really pushed the reported death toll in Iran up past 430.
While Israel at that point was reporting around 24 civilian casualties.
Correct. Then things took another major turn. June 22nd and 23rd, so just in the last couple of days.
The U.S. entered the picture directly.
Directly. American B-2 bombers, the stealth aircraft carrying bunker busters, these are weapons designed specifically for heavily fortified underground sites.
Right.
Plus Tomahawk missiles. They struck Iranian nuclear sites again. Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan. The same ones Israel hit earlier.
And the U.S. president described the mission as spectacular, even hinting at regime change.
That language was certainly noted. Spectacular and the regime change hints, yeah. Quite a statement.
Which brings us right up to today, June 23rd. Iran's launched more missiles in retaliation, though reports say they were intercepted by Israel's defenses. And Israel has hit Fordo again. This time the reports say with unprecedented intensity.
The language keeps escalating along with the actions.
So with all this back and forth, this intense timeline, what are the sort of core objectives driving Israel and Iran right now?
Well, from Israel's side, it seems pretty clear. The goal is to seriously degrade Iran's nuclear capability and probably its broader military capacity, too. Prime Minister Netanyahu has even publicly said their war goals are very close.
Very close, okay. And Iran?
Iran's position is one of defiance. They're vowing heavy consequences, they keep launching these missiles, and are likely evaluating, what other retaliatory steps they might take, emphasizing resistance.
And the U.S. role obviously has jumped significantly. The president's setting that 2-week deadline for Iran to negotiate or face, well, more action.
That's a huge pressure point now.
How's the rest of the world taking this U.S. intervention?
Oh, the reaction is intense, as you'd expect. Russia immediately condemned the U.S. strikes. China and the EU are warning about the global economic impact, the spillover.
And President Macron in France has actually offered a peace initiative.
Yeah, sort of a diplomatic off-ramp idea. Iran pauses enrichment, the U.S. eases sanctions. Whether that gains traction now, well, that remains to be seen.
It's hard to see past the immediate conflict. And beyond the geopolitics, the human cost is stark. You mentioned over 430 Iranians dead, 24 Israeli civilians, thousands injured overall.
Devastating numbers.
And civilian infrastructure is being hit. Hospitals, we mentioned, potentially areas near nuclear plants, residential zones, inevitably caught in the crossfire.
It's grim.
But here's something maybe unexpected. Iran's so-called axis of resistance, proxies like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, they seem to be holding back, at least for now.
That is interesting, isn't it? It could suggest maybe a calculation by Iran to keep the conflict somewhat contained between the main players, or maybe they're holding those assets in reserve strategically. It's hard to know for sure.
What does all this mean for the sort of broader region and, well, the global economy?
Well, the immediate impact is clear. Oil prices are surging. There are real fears about the Strait of Hormuz, a critical shipping lane. Global markets are definitely jittery. Lots of uncertainty.
Looking ahead just a bit, militarily, what could be next? more U.S. and Israeli strikes seem possible.
That seems likely, given the rhetoric and the current trajectory, and Iran might retaliate further, perhaps targeting U.S. bases in the region or trying to disrupt shipping more directly.
And diplomatically, you mentioned Macron's efforts. The IAEA is involved.
Yeah, the International Atomic Energy Agency, they're holding emergency talks, naturally. But diplomacy is tough right now. Iran is saying, essentially, no negotiations until the strikes stop.
Understandable position from their side.
And beyond that, you've got the UN looking into potential war crimes, the UN Refugee Agency warning about displacement. It's complex. Interestingly, former Israeli PM Ehud Barak, he voiced skepticism about regime change actually working, suggesting a more surgical approach might be wiser.
So we've covered a lot of ground here. It's an incredibly complex, incredibly urgent situation. The region really feels like it's at a critical inflection point.
Absolutely. The world is watching, bracing for whatever comes next.
It really leaves you wondering.
It does. It forces you to ask, what are the true long-term consequences going to be? When you have these kinds of targeted strikes hitting a nation's core strategic assets, what precedent does that set, for international relations, even for the idea of sovereignty itself? It's a profound question.